Hi everyone and welcome to another video. I'm Lauren and I talk about books, and in this video I wanted to evaluate the reading goals that I set myself for the second quarter of 2022 and use that to then set some goals for the third quarter. Now, I had a couple of goals, and the first of which had to do with Invisible Cities. If you don't know, Invisible Cities is a project where every month 2 countries are picked and we're encouraged to read books from those countries. Now, at the start of the second quarter, I still had 1 country left open from the first quarter, which was Uganda. And I'm happy to say that I have read First Woman by Jennifer Nsongo-Ngabonkumbi, so that means that I have closed off all the reading that I still had left open for Invisible City for the first quarter. Now, for the second quarter, the countries overall were Rwanda, Iran, Ukraine, El Salvador, Congo, and Qatar. Of those 6, at this moment, I have already read 3. Those 3 are Iran, Congo, and Rwanda, and Iran was one that I previously already read as part of my reading around the world. So that leaves me with Ukraine, El Salvador, and Qatar. So with Ukraine, it just took a while for my book to come in. It has finally arrived, and it is Grey Bees, or Abeilles Grises in French, which is the language I'm going to be reading it in, by Andrei Kurkov. I am going to be taking this one with me for the next quarter. We have El Salvador, which I was reading and loving a book, but I was reading it on my phone and that wasn't working, so what I'm going to do probably is to buy that book in physical form, probably in French also, because it was slash and burn and it's translated from the Spanish, so I'd rather read it in French, which is a Latin language. And for Qatar, I had planned to read a book also on my phone, but seeing as that hasn't really been working, the whole e-booking on my phone, I'm probably going to leave Qatar for what it is, because I can't seem to find a book that interests me enough in a format that is also available to me. So Qatar, I'm going to just let go of it for now, and we're going to see later on what I'm going to do with it, or if I'm ever going to do something with it. So that means that there are still 2 books that I kind of had to take on with me, and that I'm looking forward to reading in the next quarter. The next goal that I set myself had to do with diminishing my TBR, and specifically reading books that I have been on my shelves prior to 2021. I want to prioritize those because I see that the books that have been on my shelves longest tend to stay there the longest. So I had a goal to at least get 3 off my shelves. I did get 3 off my shelves. I read one, which was La Fortune des Rongon, which was a book that I was planning on reading anyway. And I DNF'd another, which is a book by the French female modern classic author Colette, and I tried her book called Claudine à l'école. I have a book with all of the Claudine series, but I wasn't interested in the characters, I wasn't interested in the writing, and I wasn't interested in the setting. So I'm going to have to give that book back to my mother, and I'm going to forget all about Colette because she's not for me. And the third book is one that I DNF'd, and that is one by Maupassant, Boule de Suif. We've got 3 classics here, but 3 French books, by the way, in my reading prior to 2021. And that is one that I ended up unhauling because I read about Maupassant and he's an ass, a pretentious ass, so I'm not interested in that as well. But it does mean that I have read 3 books that were on my shelves prior to 2021, so yay me. Another reading goal that I also did very well with was rereading books. I had planned on rereading 3 books in the whole of the quarter, and at the beginning of the quarter I still had no idea which one those were going to be, but I ended up reading the whole of the Lord of the Rings trilogy by J.R.R. Tolkien and then The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. Loved rereading. It was a great experience to see the books through a different lens and see how much more there is to them than there was in my memory. So that was really good, and I'm glad I read all 4 of those books. Also, just rereading The Lord of the Rings was really nice because I'd wanted to do that for a while, and seeing how much more there was to The Kite Runner was also something that I really appreciated. My 4th goal was to read a specific longer non-fiction book, and the book that I had picked out for that was The Open Veins of Latin America by Eduardo Galeano, that I have in French here. In the end, I didn't even open it. There wasn't even a moment in time that I knew that I was going to get to it, and the reason for that is that at the beginning of the quarter, I started reading 2 other bigger books, so La Fortune des Rongon by Émile Zola and Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke, both books that I ended up stretching out over nearly 2.5 months. and I wasn't going to add another one to that. So it makes sense that I didn't pick this one up, and we're gonna see. I'm still very much interested in it. It's just going to go back on my shelves, and I'm going to read whenever. I did read another nonfiction, Dead Aid, by Dacimba Moyo, that I've already previously talked about briefly because it was part of the Invisible Cities, but it has made me realize that I'm not reading a lot of nonfiction this year, but that I am enjoying the nonfiction that I am reading because I'm diving into it in a more qualitative way, which is good. So this one is going to go back on my shelves. The last goal that I had to do with book buying, and that one did not go very well either, to say the least. The idea was that in both April and in June, I was only going to allow myself to buy one book and then really decide beforehand, okay, of all of the books that I want, which one is the one that I want most of all, and buy that one. It never worked. I think there were too many books that I had to buy in order to read them for either my book club or Invisible Cities, or that I wanted to buy because I just finished a previous one. So I think in both April and June I ended up buying 3 books, or at least 3 came on my shelves. It's also possible that I found them in free libraries or that was gifted some. But in the month of May it was also my birthday and I got gifted a lot of books, and I bought also some myself. So the book buying it's still fine. I have a TBR of 32 unread books right now, which in BookTube terminology is very small, but it's still a little bit more than what I want it to be. It has also grown 1 book compared to the beginning of the year, and that's not what I would want. So yeah, the book buying thing, not really great. But that leads us to the second part of this video, where I'm going to think of what I want to do for the next quarter, for Q3, using the knowledge that I have from Q2. So as for Invisible Cities, obviously I want to continue because I love at least being prompted to read books from different countries, because right now it's not something that I do out of my own habit. That's not correct English, but you understand what I mean. So we know that there's still 2 countries that I want to get to from the second quarter. And then we have 6 new countries, because of the 6 countries that have already been picked for the next quarter, I either haven't read anything from them or I have a book from that country that I really want to get to. So that means that besides the 2 that are still there, I have 6 additional books that I want to read. Those 6 countries are Indonesia, Czech Republic, India, Brazil, and the 2 that have been announced today, because I'm filming this on July 1st, are... I can't remember. But I know that I hadn't been there before. I'll put the names down below if you're interested. Now, as for Indonesia and India, those are 2 countries that I have already previously read a book from, but there are 2 books that I want to get to. For Indonesia, that is Revolusi by David van Kryenbroek. This is not by an Indonesian author, but it is about the Indonesian War for Independence from the Netherlands, which is the country that I am living in, so I'm really interested in this. And this author, this writer, researcher has been acclaimed for how he really dives into the lives of the people that are living in that country. He wrote a previous book about Congo. So this is going to be one that I'm going to read in the coming month. And for India, I also want to read Tomb of Sand. Can't remember the author, but Tomb of Sand is the book that won the International Booker, so I also want to get to that one. So quite some plans for Invisible Cities, 8 to be precise, but I'm looking forward to it anyways. Invisible Cities is still something that I really love doing, and even though it doesn't give me joy necessarily, I mean, they're never really fun reads, but they're always interesting reads, and the process of reading these books and of realizing that there's so much more to the reading world and to literature in general than what we usually get in this very Western-oriented setting is always very, very healthy, I think. There is one other goal that I'm going to set myself, and that is to read some bigger books. I want to get to 3 bigger books. One is going to be nonfiction. Spoiler alert, it's this one, I've already talked about it. I want to read 1 bigger classic and 1 more modern bigger books. So the classic, luckily, is going to be one that my book club picked, and that we're planning on discussing in September, I believe, so I have some time to get to this. And it is War and Peace, if you can see this. I have the French version by Tolstoy. I've been looking forward to reading this one for ages already, and this is going to be a very good kick in the butt to finally get to it. But it's a chunker, so it's going to take me some time. I have to think about when I'm going to start reading it to be done in time for a book club session at the end of September. The more modern, bigger book that I want to read is one that I've already started, and that is Moonward Spiderkin by Marlon James. I'm buddy reading this one with Ava Strange, whose channel I'll link down below. This is the second book in the Dark Star trilogy. I've talked about this trilogy regularly because I've recently reread the first one, and we're going to read this one together this month. So I'm excited for this one as well. Now, because I'm focusing on these bigger books, there are other things that I'm not taking with me as a goal. So, for example, the reading books that have been on my TBR previous to a certain date, I'm going to let go of that one. Part of the reason is that I want to focus on these bigger books, and the other reason is that the books that are left on my shelves that have been there prior to 2021, there are only 9 left, and of those 9, I think most of them, 7 maybe, are classics, 4 of which are pretty big. So we've got Erugo Macquart, we've got The Idiot, we've got L'Île Mystérieuse by Jules Verne, and I'm perfectly happy for those to stay on my shelves for longer than that. So I'll get to those when I'll get to those. And books that I have been on my shelves prior to 2022, there are also still 9 left. So part of me would like to get to those before the books that I buy this year becomes a very big number. But we'll get to them where we'll get to them. I don't want to make that a goal. It's just going to be something that I get to if my brain also is up to that. I also am not going to be setting myself any buying goals because it didn't work last quarter, and there's no point in me setting a goal for myself if I don't know yet how I'm going to do this. So I'm not going to tell myself only buy one book or buy no books or only buy a book if, because the past has shown me that those kind of rules have not really worked. And luckily for me, it's not a case that because I tell myself I'm not allowed to do something, I become very focused and then at one point splurge. Luckily that is not a thing. But for now, until I find a way to kind of curb my buying habits, which are not exorbitant, but I would want them to be less, I think there's no point in setting myself a goal for that. So no buying goals. There is one goal that I do want to set that has to do with things beside the actual reading, and that is writing more reviews. I've been writing reviews a little bit for the past month to exercise, trying to think about books a little bit more and broaden my vocabulary a little bit, and it's been working okay. I haven't been doing it very consistently, and I find it easier when it's an interesting book, a book that has a little bit more depth, has a little bit more layers, than when it's a fantasy that I've just been binging because my brain just needs to be my mind needs to be set off something else. So I want to do that a little bit more and to do it at more regular moments. So maybe I have to think about how I'm going to do this. Maybe set myself like a point in time every week or so that I really sit down to write stuff about the books. I really have to find a way how I'm going to do that. But I think I've already been seeing that I'm using more different words to describe books because I've been thinking about them a little bit more, which is good. So I want to do that even more in the future. So to recap, I have 3 goals. 1, Invisible Cities. Read 1 book for each country and the ones that I have left over. 1 is read 3 of these bigger books, and I think they have to be these 3. These 3 also are part of other goals, so other things that I want to do, so it has to be these 3. And I want to write reviews. Pretty okay, I think, for me, because I'm the kind of person that tends to make very, very big goals. But yeah, I have trust in these ones, and they're also all kind of linked to my overarching goal for the year, for my life, to take my time more with books and really extract more from them, whether it be knowledge, whether it be that I see more layers or stuff. But I think these goals are going to help with that, at least the bigger books and the reviews parts. Do you have any reading goals for the next period? What is your reading like in summer in general anyway? Do you tend to go for bigger books or do you tend to go for lighter books? Are you a seasonal reader? Tell me more. I'll see you in the comments and I'll also see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Ba-chum, ba-chum, chum.